the whole thing that I want to do now is to raise an architectural consciousness in South Africa. I want South Africans to be like, because it's one of those things that, the countries that have the most privilege and the most culture, where culture is funded, people are having discussions about architecture. I mean, if you go to London and someone wants to build a new building in a neighborhood, the community are going to there'll be a huge community discussion, and they'll be like, no, we don't want this building because it's kind of not in the style of Rococo, or whatever. I don't know if that even makes sense in architecture, but the community themselves. So, someone like myself, because of the history of my dad, having conscientized me about just basically being a liberated black mind, going to Wits, having the privilege to be able to go to a school where I was taught by that art teacher, going to Wits, doing everything that I did, led to the point where I want to now help South Africans have an architectural consciousness. Yeah. So, in my defense, it took long, my man. Yeah. I mean, there are even black people in my field who they themselves don't really understand what I'm talking about when I say that we need to have our own Burj Khalifa. It doesn't have to be the tallest building. Yeah. It could be a Leslie Loco, and she's achieved that. It could be anything that makes us, stand on the world stage. Yeah. And it also doesn't have to be validated by, the fact that it's in Europe or whatever. It can be validated by the fact that it's here at home, and we achieve something of greatness.
I once sat down with Umzwanele Manyi. He used to be spokesperson in the ANC, and then he left and he joined the ATM, which is led by Vuyo Zungula now, and now he's just recently joined the EFF. But in that sit down, we spoke about decolonization. And when he explained what decolonization meant to him, I was like, but it sounds like you speak about Afrikaans people.
Sure.
Because you are speaking about being passionate about your language, creating our own literature, building our own schools, having like our own dress that when you see a person wearing it, they're like, hey, you're part of...
Sure.
Not wanting to be a part of British colonization. Because I think that was where the Afrikaans thing came out. Because the Afrikaners wanted to be moved away. When you say white people, they don't punch us, because white people in South Africa could be from Britain. We are Afrikaners.
Sure.
On top of the fact that Afrikaners is African. It literally means African.
Sure.
I'm raising this because in that conversation, one of the things I say to him is, I've met so many white people in South Africa and on the African continent, and as much as we may call them colonizers, beneficiaries of colonization, apartheid, there are a lot of them without knowing that would benefit so much from the conscientization of black Africans to a point where they benefit.
Sure.
To a point where they get to travel the world and they speak African languages and they become an oddity themselves. They're like, you're a white person that can dance.
Yeah.
You're a white person that you're like, it's because I come from Gabon.
Sure.
It's because I'm from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I'm an African. And you're like, we've never seen anything like this. He's a bad example, but the number of Africans that have put us on the world stage, like a Leslie Loco in various forms, someone like Elon Musk, because we don't know how much of his upbringing and experiences being here have informed his audaciousness,
sure,
and his bravery and his desire to want to do something different, to a point where, imagine if Elon Musk was a black South African, how much hype that would be today.
Yeah.
We see similar things with Black Coffee.
Tyler
today, who's colored, not just by being mixed race, but in culture.
Sure.
Trevor Noah, who is colored, but mixed race because he's not culturally colored.
Sure.
And so many other South Africans. It's like, guys, even for white people, because they listen to some of these chats, like, they speak about black consciousness and whatever. You're like, some of this is going to save you. Because I sat in a room once with a white old man speaking about the future of sports in South Africa. And he said, the birth rate of white South Africans is so low. I think Elon Musk still echoes the same thing about whites globally. It's so low that if South African sports is going to be competitive in the future, we are forced to develop non-white athletes. if we want the future of the African economy to compete with the world, and for you to preserve Camps Bay and your beautiful mansion, and you will have to invest in black colored entrepreneurs, because they will save your ass tomorrow.
Exactly.
You'll go to Europe, you'll fuck out and you'll be broke, and you'll come back. You'll go to America, you'll realize that you don't have what it takes. You're not that good. And it's going to take these experiments. They call them experiments in politics. The Musi Maimanis of the future to preserve your privilege. For now, I guess, against black people, sadly. But in the future, against a potential neo-colonization of China, Russia, America. Who's going to protect you if you're not investing in these people? Because the Russians, the Indians, the Americans, the Germans, the Canadians, when they get here, you're not going to be part of their crew.
Sure.
But you will not have capacitated the people that you live with today to become strong and to be like, no, this is my white brother. And I've come up with him. The same way Siya Kolisi protects his white rugby mates on the team.
You know, like, it makes me think of two things, what you're saying. Number one, look at what's happened in China, right? I don't know how people feel about China, but I see China and I see a lot of powerful things they're doing. So, for example, the EV, electric vehicle market in China has blown up. China produces much more electric vehicles now than anyone else in the world,
100%.
right? And people complain, they're like, yeah, they're getting giant subsidies from the government. That's why
Chinese Communist Party. Boy.
Sure, that's why they're doing better than us. And they're even like blocking these EVs from coming into Europe because they're so competitive, right?
Yeah.
But Elon Musk took the production of Tesla to China. Why? Because he knows that those guys can put a car together like crazy, right? They're efficient like that. And some people argue that the reason why the EV market in China has blown up is because they had the car there, they had the Tesla there, and they were like,
it's like the iPhone and the Huawei.
What's up, Baba?
The iPhone, the Huawei, the Xiaomi, because they used to put it together there as well.
Sure. So it makes, and why did Elon Musk take it there? You know, people are complaining about government subsidies, yet at the same time, because it makes business sense, he's taking it there. So in other words, what's good for China is good for business. That's what I'm basically saying. And so you can't tell me that in South Africa, it's good for business when there are people who are not educated, you know, people who are just not achieving their full potential, which leads me to the next point. Think about the idea of conscientiousness. You know, you are supposed to create an EV, an electric vehicle, or you want an electric vehicle business. You want people who are going to be able to put the right component in the right place all the time. You know, you don't want a guy who's going to be, hey, Baba, what were you doing last week? And he puts it in, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You want people who are like almost robotic, which is what people say about China and their manufacturing culture.
Yeah.
How do you develop conscientiousness? You know, I always say to my 13-year-old son that, my brother, if you want to be, you know, the next Elon Musk or whatever, you need to know that when a line is straight, it needs to be straight. And that thing talks about accuracy, talks about precision. Some people will say to you, even Africans themselves, it's African time. What is that nonsense? African time. We shouldn't have African time. We should just have time. Because if you want, you know, I always say capitalism thrives in accuracy, in predictability, in systems working really well. So you want the systems to work well because it's good for business, right? So if you want good working systems, invest in mathematics, invest in the sciences. Make sure that these kids understand that when it's straight, it needs to be straight. You know, if you're going to do coding, my man, you miss one yana sign, comma, whatever, it's just not going to work.
The code doesn't work. One comma,
it doesn't work. So that idea of conscientiousness, and you know, this thing that, and again, it's our own suffering as Black people, that somehow, you know, when you see someone doing something accurate, I've had colleagues, you know, Black colleagues work with me at VIDS, and when you say to the guy, Baba, but why are you late for the meeting? You know what I'm saying? And you realize that, hey, guys, we need to decolonize accuracy. We need to decolonize being modern. Because all of these things, so the point that I'm making is that if you invest in education, and if you invest in these type of things, you know, in people being systematic, that's how we're going to see our country producing new types of energy. You know, who would want to invest in, bring a high-tech company into a space where people just are not conscientious, you know, where they're not going to do things in accuracy?